name's Yorgun Marcel. I'm Dean of Students here at AUC for about 10 months going on 11 months. And so part of my responsibilities here is obviously coordinating the Dean of Students office in terms of support to students in regards to various needs that they may have that fall outside of the classroom. And so under that umbrella is the Center for Student Wellbeing, the Career Center, residential life, athletic services, and then the co-curricular programming as well falls kind of under the umbrella of the services, and of course the Office of Student Life, which is all of our clubs and organizations and student activities and conduct and community relations to some extent. Yeah. In regards to the DOS hour, the idea here was to make myself, the office, and really all of the services that fall underneath that more visible, and to start the process for students of understanding that, and I don't know if you've encountered this, but we often get a lot of students that come into my office and they were told, oh, you need to speak to the dean about this. Well, there's a lot of deans on this campus, and so the confusion as to which dean they meant, and so that's where kind of the initial thought started from. But really, if you notice during the DOS hour also, we were encouraging students to sign up on our Instagram and various social media. It's so that we can start creating a two-way communication street. Once we get a good level of students following, then we can start communicating things around policies, procedures, events, activities, so that we cut through some of the noise on campus, and students are able to be a little bit better informed and have basically in their pocket access to both the dean and the office and the services that are happening, and hopefully becoming more aware. So that's where kind of the idea came from of the DOS hour, from a communication, public relations point of view, but also just again for an opportunity for me and the members of my office to not stay in our office. We really want to go out to different areas and different pockets of our student population and interact with them and hear and share in their experiences to hopefully better support and serve them. Well, so, one of the DOS hours that we're hoping to do is centers around the student lounge here in the building. When I came in and I looked at that lounge, I just found its utilization, to be lacking. It serves a purpose, but I think there's more that can happen in that space, from programming, but also I believe in setting the right context and frames. The space is used in a certain way because we've allowed it to reflect a certain ethos, and aesthetic. So looking at it from an aesthetic point of view, but also looking at it from what kind of life do we want in there. And actually, that question connects to the question you asked me about collaborating with organizations. I would love for certain organizations to come and look at that space and say, and think, how could we utilize that space as part of our regular activity and programming? It's not all about the plaza or, yes, this is a nice size lounge, and some of the medium to smaller organizations should feel welcome to utilize that space for some of their events, activities, and again, this is the Student Center building, and we'd like to also see that hyped up with life, Well, so I think the first thing to understand is these are issues that are not mine alone to just address. They are community-wide issues, and some of these issues are issues that various stakeholders on our campus have been working on trying to identify the causes of the problems and the right solution for the problem, because a solution has to be something that's sustainable over time, and not something that's a short fix, and then a semester or a year later we're right back where we started. And ultimately, I think part of the interactions with students is sometimes explaining to them the societal structures that impact some of the situations that they see on campus. There's an AUC bubble, but it's not that impermeable to what's going on outside of campus. And so it's connecting those two things so students understand the complexities of some of these issues, and just to work with the various offices and entities that are tasked with some of these areas. So for instance, with the food situation, we've been working and discussing with our operations people the concerns of the students. They're more than aware of those. The president, the provost, much of the leadership, university is very much aware of that. But at the end of the day, understanding that food services on campus is part of a business mechanism, and so it's finding the business who can fit into the expectations of our community and has the right model that works for them, but also works for us. And so that's where the complications, I would say, in terms of finding the right fit sometimes come into play. Infrastructure in terms of where to locate them, in terms of where the students need to access them. But we're working on several ideas, and hopefully some of these will come to fruition in the next year. Well, yes and no. I think it starts with the definition of collaborating. If students come to me and their definition of collaborating is, can we have more money? That can only go so far, Of course, when we can support financially, we're more than happy to, but like I said, there's a limit to that. And it's also again, going back to your definition of collaborating. Is it your vision, or is it my vision, or is it our vision? And learning to work towards a common vision with common goals. And so I think that's also part of it is, the short answer is yes, would love to collaborate with individual organizations as much as possible, but we don't want to stifle their vision, but we also have a responsibility towards making sure that certain things that are a priority to us are also get their time and space to shine. And so we have to manage our resources, both human and financials, accordingly. So we have our CSW will be doing several events during Mental Health Week through the counselors and presentations with classrooms and academic department. As you know, the clinic did a wellness day last week, so kind of a launching off point for that to some extent. And so really, I think it's again about helping students know what services are available, where to find the resources, to learn how to better manage, the reality of AUC and of higher ed, of pursuing a higher education degree. Sure. So again, it's always about how you define words. So well-being also encompasses our athletics, and healthy body, healthy mind. And so that's a big service. Utilizing our facilities to keep a healthy body, at its peak condition, not just because you're an athlete, but because you want to take care of your body, because your body is part of your mind, and your mind is your primary tool that you're utilizing here. So that's one service, but then focusing more on the student well-being. So of course we have our counseling staff that are here to work with students, not just as they're struggling with various issues, but also in a lot of ways, the ideal intervention of a counselor is to help them navigate, manage, and adapt and create a system that works for them, and understanding that every individual brings on their own set of, luggage to the equation, basically. So our counseling staff. We have our accommodations for students with accessibility issues, whether they be mental or physical. And so again, our staff there works with them to make sure that they have the right accommodations in the classroom in a timely manner that doesn't so that they're not hampered in their ability to perform at their optimum level. We do also do some work with at-risk students that have been found to be academically at risk in terms of, again, connecting them with the right, whether it's advising, tutors, support, mental health, whatever the equation that needs to get them to perform at their optimum needs to be. And so obviously there's never a one-size-fits-all because whatever a student brings into the room when they walk in is really when the process starts. But so those are some of the key services of the Center for Student Wellbeing. But beyond that, of course, they do some educational outreach and programming. It's not necessarily about coming in the room and needing something. It's about learning about managing your stress, your health, your nutrition, all of these things kind of play into the equation. So there's a lot of concerns regarding the waiting list from students. When were these concerns voiced? That is the first question. Because I know for a fact that at the peak of last semester, we had less than 20 on a wait list, and the wait list was less than 2 weeks. You know, because they're not wrong. About a year ago, at one point, the wait list got out of control. But we addressed it, we fixed it, and at the maximum point, I think we had about 40 students on the wait list at one point last semester, and it went down to 14 by the end of the semester, and the wait list in itself was 2 weeks in between the point you requested and the point you got in. And I actually just spoke with our staff in the one of our staff in the CSW this morning, and they were saying like, we saw an uptick in requests over the week, from like end of the week into this week, and we are, I believe, in around 30. You know, and they're already working on making sure that these students get seen within the next week or two. You know, so we're on track. You know, so I think, I mean, the message here is, and this is an interesting point because it is, again, one of the very reasons why I wanted us to have this social media presence is because a problem is identified, it is communicated to us, and sometimes we address the problem, but we don't have the mechanisms to change the narrative. You know, and so again, this is the whole point of us being able to push the data, such as, we have about a 2-week waiting list, you know, from the CSW right now. We can't guarantee that it's going to stay that way, but that is our goal, is to try to keep it within a reasonable timetable so that students get the help that they need. And again, there's several other misperceptions, such as students aren't using our athletics facilities enough. Well, no, the numbers show a different story. You know, so we've been organizing a lot of that data, and eventually we want to use the Instagram and the DOS hour to start sharing some of that data so that students realize like, not everything's perfect, but a lot of the things have been addressed, and we're working on addressing some of the other ones. Like again, you know, you mentioned the food at the beginning of this interview, and that's a complex equation that has multi-players around the table. You know, and so that's maybe why it's taking longer to see results on these types of things, but because we don't want a quick fix. We want to try to come to some sort of more permanent fix, you know. Sure, so I think, one of the main things that our staff in the Career Center does is they work a lot with students in terms of crafting and honing their resume so that it responds to the expectations of potential employers, helping them prep and research and look into internships opportunities that again fit their professional aspirations, and also help them to some extent, and the community gain, and the businesses, various business communities gain exposure to the talents that are here at AUC. So it's through a combination of activities. There are some that are very targeted for the individual student in terms of helping them on their career path and understanding their skills, their strengths, and all of those things that they can contribute to the workplace, but also finding employers and helping them understand the value that an AUCN can bring to their respective endeavor, you know, and finding these types of right fits. So as you may know, you know, one of the things, for instance, we have our employment fair coming up through the Career Center, and one of the priorities of the Career Center is not just any business can show up. They have to actually have openings for our students or recent grads. You know, it's not just, you're out there and you want some quick PR. No, are you actually offering an opportunity for our community, for members of our community? I think another unique aspect of our Career Center, and again, going back to this concept of lifelong learning and continuing education, is that they provide these services for alumni as well. You know, and again, I think it's a combination of them decades ago realizing that they were at one point the only career center in Egypt, and really realizing the needs of our graduates beyond in first year of career, 5 years in, you know, again, helping them with connecting with various industries and leaders and the upscaling opportunities that may be necessary as they progress in their careers. But yeah, so those are just a few of the things that they can get through our Career Center. So One, I think the first thing is to demystify student government and elections, one. Two, you're asking the wrong person. It's not my government. So I should ask you as a student, what would you like to see your government do for you in terms of helping you understand your government and letting you learn how and why you should get involved. You know, again, former student body president here, you know, so it's not my administration's responsibility to make sure that my students are engaged and understand their policies, rights, and everything. As a student government, it's my responsibility. I'm only as strong as the voice of my students are. That's a fantastic question. That's a fantastic question. So incentives are easy, in a weird way. It depends on the kind of incentives that you're thinking about, but ultimately that's easy. The real question, in my opinion, is why wouldn't they? Why do they need more incentive? Then this is supposed to be their community, you know. So I think incentives are necessary, they're a good thing, and some of them are built in already. But I think the question as to what more incentive do you need than this is the community you live in? You know, like, do you walk through your house disinterested in everything that goes around there, your neighborhood? So why do you need an incentive to be more involved and concerned with what's going on around here? You know, it's a concept of, because I see sometimes students say this is our campus when they want something. But when they don't want or need something, then it's our campus as faculty and staff and administration to keep it functioning in the right way, you know. And so, again, those are the things that I hope through the conversations at the DS Hour we can get at. Like, look, again, this is a partnership. This community doesn't just belong to students. It belongs to students, staff, faculty, alumni, and we all have a role to play here in shaping this community. And it's not just about one vision, but it's common vision. Yeah. Well, I think that firstly, that's a question that you want to ask of the student union and the student government and the student senate. But I think there's a logical reason for that is, again, whenever you have an election, you know, there are logistical issues to having a physical election that you minimize by having it online. It also, in a way, is easier to capture, in theory, actually, to increase the vote. You know, I mean, there's a reason why in certain countries you're seeing more absentee voting, you know, because if you're requiring people to show up during a certain window of time, you know, to vote, then you're saying, oh, your work, your family, your classes, you know, it becomes a lot harder to carve that time, and depending on the lines, you know, you may want to vote, but you're unable to vote because you only have so much time to dedicate to it. And so I think it comes from the right place. But the flip side of that being, okay, now if the voting itself is taking place online, what else are we doing in terms of activities? You know, so when the candidates are, you know, presenting their platforms and everything, how are we publicizing this? Are we making this a major event on campus? More importantly, as with any government, and when you really examine voter turnout, are the voters paying attention? Because I go back to the responsibility is also on the individual to want to be an invested citizen. You know, you can complain all you want, but if you're not voting, then you kind of given up the right to complain at the same time. You know, so yes, everybody on this campus knows that there's a student union and a student government and a senate and all of these things, but how many of these students know when they meet? How many of these students know where they meet? How many of these students know what's on their agenda? You know, that's not my place to ask these questions. There are some procedures and policies, they're not as refined as I'd like them to, and at the same time, you can't have chaos and mayhem, you know. You can't have everybody wanting to do everything every time the same way or different ways, but the same thing. And there's an infrastructure that's in place that you have to respect. So here's what I mean by that. We're not a concert venue. We're an institution of higher education, okay? We realize that music is part of the age group that we serve. And that's why musical performances, artistic performances, are a logical part of the experience of being a university student. But it cannot, the scale of these events and the impact that it has on the structure of the university and the demand of the staff and everything, can't outweigh the benefits of the students, which is, okay, you want to have a great event, a great concert, but we can't have concerts every week, okay? Now, at the same time, my first job out of college was director of student activities, and I organized about 27 live concert events a semester, okay? But it was all about scale. I had one big concert a year, but I had smaller, coffee house performances, and so I think that's where it's that balance that we need to look at. And also, I keep hearing students wanting to have experience with these larger scale things. So the question then becomes, okay, how do we create an inclusive model that allows students from various, pockets of the university to get involved in these large scale events? And so we've been in talks with the student union about ways to maximize opportunities for students, where there might be, I believe, where there's a concert that will be happening this fall, which will be different from the one that the student union organizes, but will include different groups of students than you would normally find. And that's kind of the model that I said, okay, let's test it out this year. One big concert a semester, one that's kind of more open to different groups, and then one kind of our traditional student union spring concert, and then in between, I'd like to see a lot more smaller things happening. So not going to be necessarily the answer you're looking for. So let's talk about the activities that our organizations do. Okay, let's talk about the behavior of our students on this campus, all right? If you go into the student lounge, hopefully they removed it, there were 2 or 3 broken couches, and tables. We're going to be spending money on that to replace those, So what can students do in regards to the financial crisis? Well, we're all trying to be very responsible in how we steer and steward the funds that we have. And if, again, I hate to be almost sounding like a broken record, but if students don't take an interest in every piece of their actions on this campus and the impact that it has, on the finances, money spent replacing a table or a chair is money that could go towards an event, that could go towards helping students, that could go towards potentially someone's salary, So the question, so that's one. 2, and it goes back to your question about the big concerts. Yeah, and that is an incredible amount of money spent with every one of these concerts and energy. So all of these people that are helping behind the scenes make this happen. Where else could their energy be focused in terms of keeping costs down? So it's 50-50. I think so. Again, what I'm trying to say here is ultimately it's not your responsibility as students to fix this or to worry about those details, but it is your responsibility to be mindful of how we can keep our community moving and focusing on the real problems. But if we have to constantly go back and address these small things that create these costs, and I hear it from a lot of people. They're like, why are you worrying about the number of the food at this event that was wasted? Yeah, when there are over 3,000 events on campus, and if you multiply that, say, maybe half of them have food there, and out of half of those events, maybe 50% of the food is wasted, and you add all of that cost together, how much money was taken out of clubs and organizations to fund this stuff that could have been used towards something else? Just having that thought process as you wander through the day could change a lot of things about, where our resources go. If people are more respectful of the furniture, of turning off the lights when they exit a classroom, of the water usage, all of those things, that all impacts how the budget of the university is constructed. You know, that's how our students, I think, can have the biggest impact here, you know, in helping us use our resources wisely. Yeah.